I want to show you how to use regular expressions inside MongoDB with Python. But before I do that, we really need some better data to play with. And so to do that, I'm going to pull in some data from Reddit. And I think this illustrates one of the real strengths of MongoDB, which is how easy it is to ingest data, especially data that you don't quite understand the structure of before you start playing with it. So this is Reddit's homepage, Reddit's technology homepage from today. And we're going to pull in these stories to MongoDB. Let's see how we would start thinking about that. So first of all, Reddit has this nice feature where if you append .json to a URL, and I see I just put .json at the end of that URL, then it's going to show you a JSON version of their homepage. And this is pretty overwhelming, and the data looks pretty complicated. So let's see if we can sift through this a little bit to figure out what the structure is. So to do that, I'm going to go into the terminal, and I'm going to curl this URL. So it was www.reddit.com/r/technology.json. And I'm going to put that into a file called reddit.json. All right, so I did that. And now I have that file, and it's still pretty complicated. So how can I make it better? Well, it turns out there's a built-in system in Python for dealing with JSON. So I'm going to cat that file, reddit.json, and redirect it to Python and to a module called json.tool. And this -m runs the module as a script. And then I'm going to just send that to more and take a look at that file. All right, so that's much better. So with that little command, I was able to pretty print this JSON file and start inspecting the structure. And I did this a little bit before I recorded. And it looks like what we have here is there's a JSON document with data with a sub key called children. And in there is an array. And then these documents that come after all seem to be stories, where the story is under the data key. So you can see here we have a story, the permalink, and the title, I think, is the thing that's interesting. Japanese scientists have succeeded in transmitting energy. This was the first story you saw on the page. And then here's another story, etc., etc., etc. So I can figure out what the structure is here, and I should be able to use that to pull data in. So let me show you a program to do that. Here's the program that's going to read this data directly from Reddit and put it into MongoDB. It uses some modules that we're not going to use very often or even at all in this class, so you don't need to really understand them. But URL lib2 is the one, and the JSON one as well. And the URL lib2 is going to let us do a web request to Reddit, and JSON one is going to parse the JSON. So we make a connection to localhost for MongoDB, someplace to put the data. We make a connection to the Reddit database inside MongoDB, which of course we haven't used before, but it will be auto-created as soon as we put data in the collection. And then a stories collection. I've run this multiple times, so I needed to drop the stories collection beforehand to make sure everything was empty. So I did that here. And then I found the Reddit page, which is the one that we showed before, which is reddit.com/r/technology.json. And I open it using URL lib2 to get a handle to that page. And then I need a parsed version of this page. So I call the JSON module that I imported, and I load it up, and I read the whole thing. And that's going to create a bunch of documents that I can iterate through. Now, we already know what the structure of this page is because we pulled the URL of Reddit, we put it into a text file, and we put it through a version of the JSON module so we could see it. And so we know that what's really interesting in each of these documents is we need to look at, in the parsed version, really it's just the first document that we need. We just need whatever is in data children. So parsed data children. That field itself, the value is an array, which is each of the stories. And I learned that by just inspecting by hand what was brought back from Reddit. Okay, so once I have each of the stories as a JSON document, now it's really simple. I just call insert one on each one. And that's it. And I look inside each one and pull the data element out because I noticed that there was a sort of an extra level hierarchy there that I don't care about. If you go back to the original file, you'll see that. So let's run this and see what we get. So we're going to Python read reddit.py. And if I do that, it runs without incident. And now we just need to look inside the database. So we're going to start Mongo. We're going to use the Reddit database. And then we are going to look at db.stories. We'll do a find one on that. All right. So we did a find one on this. And the first document in the stories collection inside MongoDB now is the story on Japanese scientists finding a wireless way to transmit energy. So that's great. That's exactly what we wanted. And if we find a whole bunch of documents, which we can do, then it's not going to be formatted. I'll do it pretty. There we go. Now we have multiple stories, each one its own document. Perfect. Now we finally have some data that we can search and we can use for the subsequent lessons.